The rain had turned the alleyways into rivers of sorrow, glistening with oil-slicked puddles and forgotten wrappers, the kind of streets that echoed with silence louder than noise, and amid the cold indifference of a bustling city that never slowed down, a mother crouched with her back against a shuttered store, her coat soaked through and her eyes hollow, clutching a baby wrapped in nothing more than a threadbare towel, while two small boys, no older than 8 and 6, sat quietly on either side of her, not crying, not begging, just existing, invisible to the hundreds of hurried feet that passed without pause, without notice, as if their suffering had melted into the concrete beneath them, becoming just another stain of poverty in a city too busy to care, too proud to look down. Their names were Rosa, Matteo, Luca, and baby Isabella, and they had once had a home, a father, a routine, a life that, while modest, was filled with laughter and warmth, until a drunk driver took Carlos from them one winter night, and with him went their income, their security, and soon after, their home. Shelters were full, government help delayed, family far away and equally impoverished, and so Rosa did what so many others had done. She took to the streets, praying each night for a miracle, shielding her children from the worst of the cold and the harshness of strangers' stares, pretending to be brave when her heart broke a little more each day. But the world was cold, and help never came, not until one gray-skied Thursday, when a man in a worn gray hoodie with holes at the cuffs and sneakers more duct tape than soul stopped right in front of them and crouched down without a word. His name was Caleb Morris, a 42-year-old janitor with a quiet past and a heart that still beat for people who had nothing, perhaps because once upon a time, he too had been lost, alone, and dangerously close to giving up. He had been a paramedic once, the kind who ran toward flames and screams, who brought life back with paddles and prayers, but life had its cruel way of breaking even the healers. His wife, Joanna, died of breast cancer at 37, a fight they thought they'd won until they hadn't, and the medical bills swallowed everything they had, leaving Caleb with an empty house, an aching soul, and a bottle of painkillers that tempted him more than he'd like to admit. What stopped him wasn't a hotline or a sermon, but an old neighbor named Mrs. Dubois, who knocked on his door one night with leftover casserole and said, "You don't have to eat it, honey, but you don't get to leave this world without knowing someone sees you," and just like that, his life took a breath again. That moment stayed with him, carved into his heart, and now, all these years later, when he saw Rosa and her children invisible beneath that awning, he knew he couldn't be another passerby, so he handed her the coffee he'd just bought for himself, kneeling beside them as if they were royalty, as if their presence was the most important part of his day, and with a soft smile he said, "This is for you. It's hot, be careful," and Rosa, stunned by the unexpected tenderness, took it with trembling hands as tears welled up in her eyes, not because of the drink but because someone finally looked at her and didn't look away, and then, breaking the silence, Matteo, who hadn't spoken in months, whispered, "Do you have another one?" And Caleb chuckled, "I wish I did, kiddo, but tomorrow I'll bring 3, and he did, returning the next morning with 3 cups of cocoa, a loaf of bread, and socks that didn't match but were dry and clean, and over the following days he came back again and again, bringing food, blankets from his closet, hand warmers, and stories that made the boys laugh, the kind of stories that made them forget the cold, if only for a while. Caleb didn't have much, his janitor salary barely covered his rent, but he gave what he could, and more than that, he gave his time, his presence, sitting on that curb as if it were a throne, treating them like family and never once making them feel like charity. He saw them, truly saw them, and in doing so, reminded them that they mattered, and slowly, cautiously, Rosa began to trust him, began to open up about the trauma, the nights spent under bridges, the rejections at shelters, the judgment from strangers who assumed she was lazy or addicted or worse, when all she had done was fall through a system designed to forget people like her. And Caleb listened, never interrupting, never offering false hope, just listening with the kind of empathy that made her feel human again. And then, when he realized the shelter system wasn't going to help fast enough, he took a risk. He went to a local news station and told them their story, not for attention but for awareness, and the station aired a heartfelt segment titled, "The Family We Forgot," complete with footage of Rosa's boys smiling shyly and Caleb wiping a tear from his eye as he spoke about compassion. And something extraordinary happened after it aired. People cared. A local bakery started sending food, a retired teacher volunteered to homeschool the boys, a Community church offered temporary housing in a spare parsonage, and someone even offered Rosa a job cleaning offices, which she took gratefully, holding her head high because finally, she was standing again. Caleb didn't stop there. He used his voice, his time, and his connections to create a small network of helpers. Former co-workers, kind-hearted neighbors, volunteers who remembered what it meant to care, and within weeks, Rosa and her children had gone from sleeping on pavement to living in a modest one-bedroom apartment with heating and running water, a crib for Isabella, and drawings from Luca taped to the walls, mostly of superheroes with beards and gray hoodies. Caleb, always Caleb, their silent guardian. And then came an unexpected turn. Caleb was offered a new job by a non-profit organization inspired by the very segment he'd initiated, a role as community outreach coordinator, a title he never dreamed of, with a salary that wouldn't make him rich but would allow him to help many more families like Rosa's, and though at first he hesitated, feeling undeserving, it was Rosa who put her hands on his shoulders and said, "You gave us life again, Caleb, it's time you believe you deserve yours," and with that blessing, he stepped into the new role with humility and quiet fire, working long hours but never missing his weekly visit with Rosa's boys, who now called him Uncle Caleb, their eyes brighter than ever, their voices louder, their drawings filled with color, and months passed, then a year, and Rosa enrolled in night classes to become a certified nursing assistant. Matteo began writing short poems about heroes who wear dirty shoes and save people anyway, and Luca, the youngest, learned to ride a bike, wobbling through the park while Caleb jogged behind, arms ready to catch him if he fell, and the city, once indifferent, started to change too, a ripple effect from one act of kindness, as more people opened their eyes to those around them, started small gestures of care, remembering that no policy, no headline, no politician could replace what a single heart could do when it chose to love freely, and though the world still spun with its chaos, still harbored cruelty and apathy, there was something undeniable about the power of one man who chose to stop, to kneel, to offer a cup of coffee and a smile instead of silence, and that something changed everything. And if you were to walk past that same corner today, you'd find no one sleeping under the awning anymore, but nearby, in a modest community center painted in bright murals, you'd find Caleb hosting a storytelling circle for kids who've been through hell, teaching them to find their voices, reminding them that they are more than their suffering, that they too can rise. And every so often, Rosa stops by in her nurse scrubs, dropping off cookies and sitting beside him as they watch the next generation of survivors begin to believe in themselves, and perhaps that is the quiet magic of compassion. It doesn't roar, it doesn't seek reward, it simply shows up and keeps showing up, turning hopeless corners into places of light. And while Caleb never considered himself a hero, never wanted praise, there's a mural on the side of the center now. A painting of a man in a gray hoodie holding the hand of a little boy with a cape, with the words, "He came when no one else did," scrawled above in Matteo's handwriting, and people stop to look at it, some even cry, but Caleb just smiles, adjusting the backpack on his shoulders as he walks to his next visit, knowing that in a world where so many walk by, he chose to stop, and because he did, lives were changed, hope was restored, and one forgotten family found their future again.